So, welcome back to week 2 of our Back to Basics Sunday message series, Unity in a Nutshell 2023. And congratulations, because you made it through the first week with flying colors. And so today we're going to look at our second spiritual principle, which, by the way, here's the spoiler alert. It's the one that some people bump up against. It's the one that some people have a theological issue with, and it's also my favorite. Well, I love all of them equally, and that's because I have come to understand by practicing them, right? Because it only works if you work it. But I have come to understand that in practicing these principles over the years, they all work together holistically, and that makes sense, right? You know, this is why they have absolutely changed my life for the better, and I know that they can do the same for you. They have changed my view of how I understand God, how I understand how life works, and also what my own insights are for what is mine to do in this world. Now, we all have that and want to be on that path of discovery of what is mine to do, right? So last week we looked at the first principle, and I shared just a little bit with you about our co-founders, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, and the Unity Movement. And I just want to remind you that at any time you can go to our YouTube channel and review or catch up. And actually, I was thinking this morning as we were hearing the daily word that, in case you don't know, I created a little series called "Put a Myrtle on It." And I did 74 episodes of those, and those are all on our YouTube channel. So anytime you are looking for a little myrtle, or you want to put a myrtle on it, or you want to hear divinely guided meditation for healing, you can just pick any one. You know, like you just open the Bible and pick a verse. You can pick any one, and I promise it'll be right and perfect for you. Okay. Back to basics. Now, unity is a positive path for spiritual living based on the practice and the teachings of our master teacher and our way shower, Jesus the Christ. Now, we are a part of the New Thought movement, and I just want to clarify here, we're not Christian Science. We're not Unitarian. We're not Unitarian Universalist. We're not New Age. New Thought is not New Age. Let's just say that together. New Thought is not New Age. Unity began in the late 1800s by Charles and Myrtle Fillmore based on affirmative prayer, based on her healing, as we heard in the Daily Word today, and based on our understanding that Jesus is the example, not the exception in how we embody and express God. God, the one true source for all that. Let me just say that again. Jesus is the example, not the exception. And I know you want to say that, so let's just say it together. Jesus is the example, not the exception. And so it's important for you to know that, you know, we're not just hanging out here in some kind of woo-woo, la-la land magical thinking. No, no, no. We are practicing spiritual principles in our daily lives in a consistent way because they are profoundly relevant to what is happening in our world. Now, I want to make this distinction because I'm sure that you've noticed that there are things going on in the world that will break your heart. And if they're not breaking your heart, you're not paying attention, okay? And sometimes these things like raise my blood pressure, right? You too, maybe, right? So I don't know about you, but I don't want or need some kind of frou-frou spirituality that can't stand the test of fire, so to speak, right? And face what's going on. So, for example, last week in Principle 1, I spoke about the death of Tyree Nichols at the hands of a squad of Memphis officers, police officers. And of course, he was laid to rest last Wednesday in a very emotional celebration of life service, understandably so. And I was so inspired by what our Vice President Kamala Harris said. She said, we need to let the memory of Tyree shine a light on the path toward peace and justice. Let that sink in. And so this is a great reminder that we do need a spiritual maturity here, right? Yeah, we do need to be spiritually solid, and we sometimes need to be spiritually upset. Let us remember that Jesus turned those tables over for a reason, amen? And we need to be present enough to what is happening in the world, and at the same time have a vision of possibility and action steps for how to make some much needed change in this world. Because pain pushes until vision pulls. That's the way it works. Pain pushes until vision pulls. So I just want to hit the pause button here for a minute because I want to share a story with you that I just came across this week that could have had a very different ending. Bobby Wilson is a 9-year-old black girl who was helping her New Jersey neighborhood by collecting spotted lanternflies. They were killing trees. Did you hear this story? So Bobby created this wonderful liquid concoction, and she was on a mission to spray all the trees that she could so that she could, get rid of the bugs, exterminate the bugs, but save the trees. So one afternoon, her white neighbor, who is also a local council member, and someone she lived across the street from for 8 years, didn't recognize her and called the police and said, there's a little black woman walking, spraying stuff on the sidewalks and trees. I don't know what the hell she's doing, scares me. Now, fortunately, the officer who arrived was curious about what this precious little 4th grader was doing. And Bobby's mother showed up pretty quickly to help set the record straight. But we all know only too well that sometimes these very innocent scenarios can escalate and turn into tragedy. So again, we are grateful for this ending this time. In fact, once the word out about what Bobby was doing and what had happened to her that day when the police showed up and questioned her, an outpouring of support came her way, including from Yale University, who had a ceremony for her just a few weeks ago, it was January 20th, for her efforts to eradicate the lanternflies. I mean, isn't that awesome? Isn't that wonderful? And she also got a tour so that she could meet other scientists just like her. Amen? Okay, back to basics. Now, when we last left off last week with unity principle number 1, we took a deep dive into it. So here it is. There is only one presence and one power in the universe and in my life, God the good. Now that should be familiar to you because we say it every Sunday, right? Another way of saying it is that God is absolute good, everywhere present. I also asked you to think about what God means to you now in your life. Not what you were taught before you could think for yourself as a kid, but what is your experience of God right now in your life? What is the presence that is never an absence like for you right now in your life? Because here's the thing, as long as we think of God as a person with human qualities, we actually are then restricting God to personal limitations. And I mean, you can do that if that's where you're at on your path, but you don't have to, right? Because God is bigger than religion, and God is a presence, not a person, right? Amen. Now, today we are going to look at unity principle number 2, which is human beings have a spark of divinity within them, the Christ spirit within. The very essence of God is within us. Therefore, we are inherently good. Let's just say that together. We are inherently good. Now, this is why I mentioned the spoiler alert earlier, because this is the principle that people bump up against the most. And it can have a real theological challenge, especially depending on your background. And you can probably guess why. It's because most people don't have an issue with God being good. They have an issue with humanity being good. And you only have to turn on the news to bear witness to the inhumanity of man, right? But I do caution you to be mindful of this, because when you think about it, there are some approaches that almost make a religion out of finding what's wrong with humanity. Have you noticed that? When in fact, we don't really even have to go that far, because we ourselves can make a nice list of what's wrong with us. Anybody? So my question for you this morning is this: what's right with us? Not just what's wrong with us, but what's right with us. And keep in mind, as we talked about last week, that we are all created with that little thing called free will. Free will. And it is our free will that allows us to choose what we do each step of the way. It is our free will that allows us to decide how we are going to express God in us as us. It is our free will that determines where we're going to put our focus, how we're going to invest our time and our energy. So, in a nutshell, what this principle means is that because God is everywhere present, in other words, there is no spot where God is not. We do love a pithy phrase. Let's just say it together. There is no spot where God is not. It is our belief that each person is a spark of the divine. It has that spark of divinity innately within him or her. Now, we didn't put it there, and we can't take it out, thank God, because we know we'd mess that up, right? We didn't put it there, and we can't take it out. This spark is innately within each and every one of us, and that, my dear ones, is what is right with us. That is what is right with us. And so, by now, you're probably wondering something like, well, tell me more about this spark that I can't take out, that's automatically. How the heck did it get in there? How did it get in there? So, for the answer to this, we need to only look at the creation story. So, Genesis chapter 1. Here is what is written. God created humankind in his image. In the image of God, he created them male and female. Make note, equal. Male and female, he created them. And God blessed them. God blessed them. So God created humankind in blessing, not original sin. We are born into blessing. Let's just say that. We are born into blessing, which is why in unity, at least for me, you will hear me say, born fine the first time. No conversion necessary. Born fine the first time, right? Want to say that together? Amen. And so if you hear nothing else today, my prayer for you is that you will hear this and hear this with your heart and your soul. No matter what you have been through, and no matter what you might be going through, what's right with you is that you are an expression of the one presence and the one power of God, the good. You are born fine the first time. You're not a worm of the dust, as some denominations might want you to believe. You cannot be. You were born into blessing. You were born into blessing. You're an angel of the Most High. You are the beloved of the beloved, and you are so blessed. You are so blessed. And what this means is that God is always for you. God is always ready. God is always for you. God is always with you, in you, expressing as you. It's up to you, however, with that little thing called free will, how you choose to express that potential. God is always caring and loving you infinitely. Amen? And so one of the greatest gifts, truly, that we can give the world right now is to simply remember that you are made in the image and likeness of the divine. You are made in the image and likeness of God, and you are blessed, born fine, the first time. Now, in her book, The 5 Principles, I just want to hold up this little gem again. If you don't have this, I really encourage you to get it. She's a great writer. So in her book, The 5 Principles, A Guide to Practical Spirituality, Ellen Davenport offers another idea for you to consider. And here's what she writes. The best example I know to describe our divinity compares humans to God like waves on the ocean. Each of us is as distinct as a wave, yet made up precisely of the energy and the attributes of Mother Ocean itself. We are not the whole ocean, but we are the same composition, nothing more, nothing less. And so what Ellen is saying here is that like the ocean is in the wave and the wave is in the ocean, we can never truly be separate from God. Separation is an illusion. We may think that we can be, but we cannot. We cannot be separate from the source of our creation. And so I want to go back to something that I said earlier. Jesus is the example, right? Not the exception. And one of the reasons that I want to circle back to this is because our master teacher, our way shower, also offered us this blueprint. He said, "The one who believes in me will also do the works that I do, and in fact, will do even greater." Now, I know right? But he did. He did say that. And I don't know about you, but when I hear this teaching that I do what Jesus did and even greater, my mind immediately goes to the miracle stories in the Bible, right? And these miracle stories start to feel out of reach for me. And I tend to forget that there are amazing miracles happening around me all day, every day, right? Just the other day, a friend was telling me about a priest, a rabbi, and a New Thought minister who decided to go on a fishing trip. So they got together and they went to their local lake. They rented a boat and they set sail for their day of fishing. Now, around noon, they all got hungry. And that's when they remembered that they had left their lunches on the shore of the lake. So the priest got out of the boat, walked across the lake, picked up his lunch, walked back, got in the boat, and started eating his sandwich. So the New Thought minister says, well, why didn't you get all of our lunches? So she gets up out of the boat, walks across the lake, gets her lunch as well as the rabbi's, walks back across the lake, sits down in the boat, hands the rabbi his meal. And at this point, the rabbi is just about to lose his mind. He's like, well, how did you? And the priest grins at the New Thought minister, nudges her and says, do you think we should tell him about the rocks? And she says, what rocks? Okay, so full transparency, I haven't walked on water lately. I haven't multiplied any fishes and loaves, and I haven't raised anyone from the dead. But here's the thing. When I think about these teachings of Jesus, if I allow my mind to go directly to the literal interpretation of the miracle stories, it's just so easy for me to convince myself that I'm not capable of doing these things, even though he gave us a divine blueprint, even though he told us so. What I do, you can do, and even greater. You know, if I do that, then that's really a cop-out, right? It truly is. It's a spiritual bypass. And I do know, I mean, it would be easier if he hadn't said this, but he did in a very, very clear way. So think about it this way. Maybe you haven't walked on water lately, or maybe you haven't multiplied some fishes and loaves. You haven't raised anyone, from the dead. But can you practice really his greatest teaching, which is love one another? Can you do that? I mean, is there anyone amongst us who doesn't understand what love one another means? Can you do that? So, as you find the right and perfect way to express your spark of divinity in conversations with your friends and family and your coworkers, and most importantly, in how you show up in the world, right? Most importantly, how you show up. Don't be flipping people off with a Unity bumper sticker on the back of your car. Didn't that touch a chord? Okay. What I want you to remember is what's right with you. What's right with you? You are made in the image and likeness of God, born fine the first time. You are the light of the world. The kingdom of heaven is where? Yes. God is in you, as you, expressing as you. And no matter what, please hear me, no matter what you have been through, and no matter what, not to dismiss what you're going through, but no matter what you're going through, the living energy of God is always with you. Always. Amen? So I want to leave you with this. This is a beautiful prayer. Actually, it's more like an invocation. And it was spoken by, I call her one of my favorite uppity women. Her name is Reverend E.J. Niles. And this is what I heard on my very first day, my very first class of seminary. And once you hear it, you will know why it stays with me. Take this in. At the center of my being, there is a power, which is a joyous, creative power. My recognition of this power causes it to act from me. I now recognize it and say, come forth, break through any barrier with which time, space, or memory has surrounded you. Break through the pattern of I can't, or I shouldn't, or what'll happen if I do. Break through the past of background, heredity, and tradition. Joy in me come out and operate through me in creative ways of good, unrestricted by my memory or background. Come out and operate as me. Indeed, there is a joy at the center of my being. This joy I did not create, but it created me. This joy in me is spiritual power. I now release it. Nothing in me blocks it. I let it out, and it finds creative ways to appear. It lets me know that I am a whole and beautiful person. It takes me out of what I am not and into what I truly am, into what I want to do and will do. And I am so grateful. And so ends our message for today. Thank you, and God bless you.